You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. My single biggest takeaway so far through 6 practices, 5 of which we've been able to see pieces of, is offense is still really good. The defense is punching back, if I were to oversimplify it. And part of that is a defensive line, which was much maligned a year ago. And with a lot of veteran bodies, they're competing against one of the best offensive lines that LSU's ever had. It's a good opportunity to bring our buddy Will Blackwell back onto the show. Former LSU All-American, was obviously a cornerstone of that 2011 team that obviously won the SEC and played for the national championship. Want to get some context on this team. Willie B, great to have you back, man. How are you?
Matt, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing really well, man. Tell me what I should make of 6 days of fall camp and today being the first day in pads.
I was reading a little bit of stuff before we decided to chat, Matt. I think Coach Kelly made a really good point in taking the time to get acclimated to the conditions and to the game, right? I feel like you've always had this approach of let's hurry up and get into camp and learn as much as we can and do as much as we can because we've got a game in a month. Hurry. But there's a proper amount of time if you use it correctly. And it seems like they're building up to it, and we haven't had any injuries, a couple of little tweaks, but no big injuries, no dehydration or, people getting overexhausted coming out of camp. So I think at this point, you're just looking for no news, right?
Yeah. I referenced this earlier, Will, that 2011 team, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember this right, Will. The first 9 guys had all started games in the SEC, and the 10th was a freshman 5-star in Lyle Collins in that year in 2011. Like, y'all were deep and awesome.
Yeah, if not started, at least had, significant playing time. And, yeah, I mean, we know that makes a difference because it's almost impossible to just have five guys play an entire season.
Right. So I look at this team, and, man, you return 4 starters, and not just 4 starters, but tackles that are going to be first-round picks, and guards that are 4-year. One's a 4-year starter, another's a 5th-year player who started for 4 years. Like, it's so uncommon, but can you kind of give me some context, Will, around when you have that much experience on the offensive line, how important that is?
That's like having a quarterback and set of receivers that have been there for 2 or 3 years. It's just as important, in my opinion, Matt. And that's kind of one thing I was thinking about. Obviously, you said it earlier, we're still going to be a good offensive team. But are we going to be a good football team? And good football teams are able to run the ball when they want to. I think being able, even though we're still in the passing air raid phase, and that's not going to change, the quarterback's still the most important aspect of the game. Running the ball is still extremely crucial. I don't think that you can be a great football team without being able to do that. And to be able to do that, you have to have experience. You got to have guys that can make adjustments in game, and having guys like Campbell and Emory Jones in the end, it just makes it easier all the way through because you don't have one guy that started 20, 25 games. You got, 4 of them?
Yeah.
3?
4.
So, it's just, it speaks a lot to the overall attitude of the team, probably to just be more calm, knowing that you don't really have to worry about those guys.
Will, and Will Blackwell's our guest, do you think, speaking of the running game, and that was one of the things, I know people reference this often, Will, but when I think back to 2011, right, everyone's going to talk about that drive against Tennessee where y'all went 98 yards and never threw the ball. And it just, you're laughing, but think about how absurd that is. Like, everyone knew you were going to run the ball and nobody could stop it. Like, that's the importance of having a great offensive line and rushing offense. But that team that you were on also had a bevy of amazingly talented running backs. This year, it's a little more up in the air, right? I mean, Josh Williams is back for a 6th year. John Emery's coming off an injury. Caleb Jackson's only got 31 career rushing attempts, and then you got a true freshman in Caden Durham. Not having an established, proven back, how much does that matter this year for this offense when you think about it?
Well, I think obviously it can be a huge issue, right? If your offensive line is young and your quarterback's inexperienced and you're not sure about pass protection or certain things like that. If you're a team that likes to throw the ball out of the backfield a lot, that might be a little bit of an issue. But with an experienced offensive line, I think that is one of the few positions where you can plug somebody in that hasn't played, and if they're that guy and they know how to run the ball behind an offensive line like this, they're going to find the seam.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, as long as, of course, we got Josh for pass protection. As long as we don't become predictable and let Caleb get some carries, I expect some improvement out of him.
What's your Will Blackwell with his former LSU All-American, of course, part of that 2011 team. When you watch this offensive line, well, you obviously got to see him last year, and 4 of the 5 starters are back. Like, what's your opinion of them when you watch them? Like, what impresses you?
Well, it's kind of like I said earlier, Matt. No news is good news. I think being able to watch the game just like anybody else. I don't particularly watch the offensive line unless something goes wrong or they kind of bring it up. I'm usually just kind of watching the ball. So I feel like the further I get into the game, and I hadn't sat there and said, golly, we've given up so many pressures, or we can't run the ball. If I'm not looking at things like that, then we're doing a good job, which that's probably the saddest part about offensive line is all the hard, important work these guys do and how little TV time they get.
You know what, though, man? I'll tell you guys getting tons of prep or press is Will Campbell. And,
yeah.
Man, I was going through my practice report earlier today, and I'm sure you all did this drill. Now, Les never let us watch practice, so I don't know. But it was basically a pass rush drill where it's one-on-ones, but the entire line is lined up, and only one guy goes at a time, right? It's basically to confine you into space.
Yeah.
Well, I mean this like sincerely. I don't believe I have ever seen Will Campbell lose a rep, like ever. Which is, I'm not saying he never has.
I'm surprised they still make him go, to be honest with you.
Well, you know what's funny? So yesterday he did every group, first, second, third team, all did 3 rounds. He did the first one, and then he didn't do the next. Two. It's funny you said that.
Yeah. And look, man, it's kind of crazy because I'm sure you guys are sitting there every day like, how do we not talk about Will Campbell? There's got to be something else we can talk about just because he is such a big presence on the team, right? I mean, he's been a 5-star. He's always been touted and deservedly so. He's played lights out. It's kind of hard to look past a guy like that. So I'm sure it's tough, but man, he deserves every bit of credit. And if he truly is the leader that Brian Kelly and everyone says that he is, then I really look for them to have a strong season.
Hey, you know what? I shared this too, Will. So Ory Williams, who's a freshman left tackle, went one of those reps and got beaten pretty badly by Gabe Relaford, who's going to be awesome, by the way. But they made him go again, like just made him get up and go again. He went against Paris Shand, and he got a win. He stonewalled Paris Shand. And they kept going on down the line, and Will Campbell just sort of very subtly walked up to Ory Williams and just said something to him. I was close, so I saw it. Like you wouldn't have have noticed if you weren't watching. It just happened right in front of me. And I don't know what he said, but it was so subtle and just sort of the way that he would do that, right? I mean, I would imagine as a veteran that would have to be an opportunity you would think that's just a veteran giving a moment to a young guy that would matter to a young guy, right?
Well, yeah, and part of being a good leader and cementing yourself in that role is understanding that, you're competing against the guy behind you and all that, but you never know when that guy's going to have to show up and play right guard or right tackle, or Emory gets hurt, you got to go play. You never know what can happen over the course of 12, 13, 14 games. So I think that shows maturity, like you said, and will to be able to encourage and bring other guys along, because that is depth is the biggest question mark that we have at this position.
You know, it's funny, man. I just noticed like the picture we have of you on the screen is probably like your headshot from the program back in 11. That's probably.
Oh, God. I don't want to see it.
That's an old photo, dude. But it's better than your glamour shot All-American picture. But you've got an All-American picture, which is pretty cool. I'll pull it up for those who haven't seen it. Hey, last thing. What do you think? Realistically, how much better realistically can the defensive line be this year?
I don't know, Matt. That's a really good question. I mean, how much worse can they be realistically?
Right.
I mean, everybody knows that the linebacker play was not very good for us last year, and it is probably arguably the most important part of defensive play, and for Perkins and those guys to be able to make the plays that they can make. Defensive linemen got to keep them clean. A couple of the reports I've seen, guys have been coming along. There's still some question marks. A lot of young guys in the mix. But defensive line is another one of those positions where if you have a young guy that's hungry enough, you never know what week you can just turn it on and it'll click. Yeah. All it takes is a little bit of disruption up front to make the offense uncomfortable. So I think at least having Bo at the helm will probably be in the right spot.
Did you like having so both Brad Davis and Bo Davis, the two line coaches, they are loud and let's say NSFW language heavy.
Boisterous.
Boisterous? Did you like that from a coach, or did you want someone a little more subtle?
Man. I mean, I tell people all the time. Every once in a while I'll get called the wrong name or whatever. Somebody will misspeak, and I'll say, "Look, you can call me whatever you want. I played high school football for my grandfather, so he has a tremendous reputation around the state. So I'm not here to step on that, but
of course."
Yeah, obviously, I was one of those guys that liked to be motivated, and the motivation was, hey, you, whatever, you can't do this, or you do this like A. And that's what got me fired up. Coach Stud, when I was at LSU, he was a lot like that.
Yeah.
Of course, Miles could get fiery at times, but yeah, man, I think the older I get, the easier it is to say from afar. But it's more of a player by player kind of thing, and that's what makes the better coaches. You got to know which kid you can push and cuss, and which kid you got to say, "Hey, man, come here, let's go talk over here." And obviously, guys like Brad and Bo wouldn't be at a place like LSU if they didn't understand the intricacies of that.
Great point, man. LSU is in good hands on both lines of scrimmage.
I agree.
Will Blackwell, former Tiger All-American. Always great to catch up, man. Hope you and the fam are great. Hope to see y'all soon.
Same to you, brother. I'll see you this fall.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.